Hi, I'm Jill and I'm here today on behalf of AC Education. I'm really pleased to introduce Julia, who's going to tell you a bit about why she's on the call. Hi, Julia.
I came to the positive parenting course, which you ran with AC Education, and I learned so much about it. It was it was such a good course, basically.
Oh, thank you.
But it's been a month now, and basically I'm sort of like back home full time with my children. And I feel that I'm sort of going back into my old ways. So I'm sort of shouting and screaming at them, and it's like a scratch record, and it's just I'm pulling my hair out, and I just can you help? I guess.
Certainly, I can try. So, I suppose first of all, it's really important to understand this is a really difficult time for everybody, and we need to accept that. I've had to accept in the last week that I'm one of the people that's not going to learn 3 foreign languages while I'm locked down and to play 2 new musical instruments. We've got to accept where we're at and learn to be really accepting of ourselves. You're under massive extra pressure as a parent. You've got children to look after. You've got the worry of homeschooling. A lot of families haven't perhaps got enough money at the moment, or they're waiting to find out about jobs and things. There's the pressure of social media. So I want to start off by reminding you about the aeroplane analogy. Do you remember we talked about that on the course?
Briefly, yes, I do. But if you can just remind me.
Okay, so on the course we talked about going on an aeroplane, and one day we will be able to go on holiday again. Let's hang on to that hope. And we talked about the analogy that if a plane gets into trouble, we're all taught, aren't we, in the safing briefings, let the oxygen mask drop down and put your own mask on before you deal with children and perhaps elderly family members or whatever. And we talked at the time, didn't we, about how that feels really unnatural. The first thing we do is help our children, help old granny or whoever we've got with us. But actually, if you don't look after yourself, if you don't put that oxygen mask on for you, you can't look after other people. And that is just so important at the minute, Julia. I know we can't have perhaps our big treats, like maybe a spa day or going to the gym or whatever your sort of usual time out is. So just try and carve little bits of time out. A bath with some really nice music on and the door shut, some time alone, some baking. I really enjoy making bread when I'm pressurized, giving that dough some really good pounding, just some little bits of time for you every day, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes here and there. The government doesn't say we all have to take our daily exercise together. And sometimes it's really nice to go off for a walk by yourself for half an hour. So that's why I'd start with saying, look after you first.
Okay, thanks for that. Is there any other sort of pointers you can recommend? Or
I think again, building on what we talked about on the course, we all need routine. I think we've all discovered that about ourselves in recent weeks. And I think if you remember on the course, we were laughing because I was saying sort of everybody arrives on a course and they're a bit anxious, like, what time's it going to be lunch? And I need to make a phone call to the children's school. I need to do this, I need to do that. What time are we going? Where do I get the coffee? And I said, I can always feel a visible sort of, whew, in the room when I say to people, this is how the day will work, this is where the breaks will be, this is what you do if you're not clear. And that's because we like routine. We like to know what's going to happen. A really useful quote that I've been thinking about, which I found on education.com. One of the most important things you can do to make your young child feel safe is to establish as much routine in his or her life as possible. Children and adults feel the most secure when their lives are predictable. When adults provide environments that feel safe, children learn that they can trust others to take care of them and meet their needs. So just as you did on the course, they begin to relax and feel free to explore the world. Does that make some sort of sense?
Yeah, that's a really nice quote, actually.
It is, isn't it? And
totally.
it's true of children and it's true of adults. So if you've got younger children, and I know on that course we had quite a lot of foster carers looking after quite little ones, you will probably set the routine up and you'll work that out. If you've got older children, work on it together, compromise, but set some ground rules. So personally, I would advise that you do not let teenagers become nocturnal. There is a massive temptation because it means you can crack on with all your work or other stuff or looking after the little ones in the day. So one family I know have set a ground rule that says children can get up whatever time they want, but every day, 11 o'clock, we all go out for a walk. And that just gets them into sort of a routine. You might say, I'm fine for you to get breakfast and lunch when you want, but we're going to eat an evening meal together. So make sure that you've got some kind of structure to the day. Make sure that work's balanced with fun. We're all human. You know, for children who are homeschooling, 2 hours feels an awful long time because they don't actually do that long at school without breaks or some group work or something. So, you know, make sure it's balanced with a bit of fun and use the routine that's out there. So I know a lot of people have got into the Joe Wicks morning fitness, something like that. You know, maybe many years ago, I was a childminder, and one of the things I found with the daily routine then was even the older children were quite tired by lunchtime. So the younger ones would have a sleep, and the older ones, that was a bit of a quiet time. So they would either read or we'd put on a film or something like that. So try and use the structure you've got to put some routine onto the day. How does that sound?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there, Jill. But I'll tell you another thing as well. What about the dreaded internet, you know, this online gaming? Because it's becoming such a nightmare, you know.
It's such a worry for parents and foster carers, isn't it? Yes, certainly. I mean, I'm thinking about cyber safety. I know that AC Education have a really good course about that, so I won't overlap into that too much. So what I would say is sort of think about what is reasonable and be kind to yourself. Most children and most adults are going to have more screen time, however we define that at the moment, than they normally would. There are going to be times when we let them watch the telly a bit longer, or Netflix or a DVD, whatever it is. So I think be kind to yourself, because if you start off beating yourself up, you end up feeling anxious and frustrated with yourself. But again, have a think about some ground rules, and some of it might sort itself. So for example, if you've two parents working from home that both need the internet, my top tip is do not let your children be on the gaming machines because they eat up Wi-Fi. So quite a lot of households I know have had to say, no, there are no game machines during working hours. Either you're on the internet for school, and again, it applies to adults as well as children, or you're on the internet for work. You know, that's one thing to think about. Another idea that one of my clients has had is she has set the household internet to turn off at 9 o'clock every night. And she said, you know what? It's done us actually as adults in the household a lot of good, because it stopped us faffing with our phones or whatever. We either watch something that's on one of the main telly channels, or read books, or do something a bit different. So just think what are sort of reasonable ground rules for you and your family. And what I would challenge there, and I've touched on it a little bit, and it's certainly something we talked about quite a lot on the course, Julia, is example. If 1 minute you are saying no phones at the table, and then the next minute, oh, well, it was just a work email I had to answer.
Yeah.
You know, we're all guilty of doing it. So it's really important. You know, I know children that actually quite enjoy. I know a family where an uncle before lockdown came for tea and was robustly told off by the two teenagers when he got his phone out at the table. It was brilliant, you know. So make sure you are modelling that, you know, because it's so easy for us to be distracted, isn't it? I'll answer you in a minute, Julie. I'm just checking this email. Do you find that a challenge?
Yes. Oh God, yeah, I do. I do remember that actually. And we also talked about some specific ways of managing behaviour.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? So we sort of talked about leading by example, keep home and work separate, not always be on your phone or your tablet. And we talked about ABC, antecedents, behaviour and consequences. Okay? You look like it might be ringing a bell. She always says, hopefully.
Yeah, just remind me again, though, Jill, please.
Okay, so antecedents. If you look back on a behaviour that you didn't find acceptable, the first thing is what led up to it. A, antecedents, what went on before. And we also reminded ourselves then about halt, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. For many children and young people, and if we're honest, many adults, actually they are 4 real triggers to inappropriate behaviour. So what happened before? You know, was everybody a bit hungry? Had we done our morning exercise and not had a mid-morning snack? Was everybody tired because we'd had, it sounds amazing, doesn't it, at the moment, but a busy weekend? Maybe there'd been a family quiz online or something. We'd all stayed up late. You know, what led up to that behaviour? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what behaviour did you then see that was unacceptable? And don't forget what we talked about appropriate expectations. Yeah, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But, you know, was it a complete that a child that's old enough to be able to manage emotions just completely lost it? Was there a really nasty fight between siblings? You know, what behaviour did you see? And then what were the consequences of that behaviour? And one of the things that we often fall into when we're stressed is that the consequence can be attention. So if all morning I've been trying to get your attention, Julia, because I want to show you a jigsaw, I want you to read me a story, and totally understandably you're hassled because you're trying to work, so I'm nudging and perhaps as very young children do, drive us mad, don't pull on your clothes. Yeah, I would, if actually I throw a massive tantrum, or on purpose I break a cup, or I slap my brother, and I finally got 100% of your attention, the consequence of my inappropriate behaviour has been the attention I wanted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, because I had this with my little one, my 4-year-old. He's been crying out for attention because I've got a 17-month-old and a 4-year-old. So it's really tough at the moment.
I bet.
And my 4-year-old decided to swallow a small coin.
Oh, no.
So we had to take him down to A&E. And that wasn't exactly the place where I wanted to end up. But thank God he's okay now. But yeah, it was like a cry for help. He wanted that attention. It's just so hard because he wonders why he can't go and see his friends, why he can't go out to the park. You know, we explained that virus, but you know, it's only so much.
It's so difficult, isn't it? I had a friend was playing, obviously 2 meters apart with his granddaughter lives down the road recently, and he was telling me that she had him really puzzled about something beginning with C, and she was guessing cat. He was guessing cat, and of course it was coronavirus. I just thought it's really having that impact on children, isn't it? Yeah. And their mental health we need to be aware of, but you need to look after yourself too. So don't do this in a beating yourself up way. You know, it's not sitting down every night with a clipboard and how have I done and what, but just use that ABC to quickly stand back from the situation. It might be quite soon afterwards. It might be a long, you know, at the end of that day, and just reflect. And the really useful thing about that are there any patterns? Am I getting a temper tantrum every Monday morning because we're back into a routine again? Am I finding that there's sort of a lot of sibling rivalry on this day, and maybe once a week? I know it takes longer, but I need to take the children out for a walk separately, or one might like bike riding, another one might like skateboarding, or whatever. Just try and think through what happened and if there's any way that you can manage it. Yeah. And don't forget, again, I'm going to challenge you, lead by example. What are the children seeing when you get to the end of your tether? Mm-hmm. If they're seeing that it's totally acceptable when you get to the end of your tether to throw things around the kitchen, slam the dishwasher so hard shut that you break the cups or whatever, I'm sure you would never do that, but you know, what are we modeling? It's okay. Somebody said to me recently, they'd said to their teenager, and I thought this was really powerful, it's okay to not be okay. And I think that's such a powerful message to get across. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have bad days. and think of positive ways to get rid of that frustration. So, you know, if you were doing a course with me about stress, I'd take along badminton rackets and some pillows and we whack them. Really good one. Make Play-Doh. Find the recipe online for Play-Doh that you make in a pan. Get lovely warm Play-Doh out of the pan, and even teenagers can't stay away from that. Give that a really good thump, you know, things like that. Show them positive ways to get rid of that energy, because we talked on the course, didn't we, about feelings aren't wrong.
Yes.
It's what we do with the feelings. It's not wrong to be angry. It's not at all wrong that your 4-year-old is wanting to see his friends. Of course, that's not wrong, but it's how we express that. Yeah? Is that helpful?
Very helpful. There's certainly a lot to think about out there, and it's been very, very positive.
Okay, can I just throw in 2 more things that we talked about quite a lot with your little group that day?
Yeah.
We talked about expectations being appropriate, didn't we? So your 4-year-old, you'll remember from what we talked about, can probably concentrate, really focus for 4 or 5 minutes. Because we talked about generally we can concentrate for a year of our age. At some point that must stop being true, because I certainly can't concentrate for the number of minutes for how old I am. But so being realistic, a 4-year-old is not going to sit down and do their schoolwork beautifully for 2 hours. Really little chunks of bursts of activity. And the other thing we talked about, if you remember, is that time can seem never ending to young children. In fact, even older children. So if you say to them, we'll do it in 10 minutes, you may think that's perfectly reasonable. I've explained that in 10 minutes I will be free, but actually 10 minutes to somebody little is ever so difficult. So have a think about how you can show that visually. If you've maybe got some like a kitchen timer, or you can buy online lovely sand timers that time for longer. Even an electronic kitchen timer I use, because children can watch it count down, and they might spend the last 3 minutes sat on the stairs, stamping their feet, itching about, but they can see the time going. So that's another really useful technique to sort of set those boundaries very clearly.
Yeah. So,
how do you feel? Does that give you something to sort of work with?
Yes, most definitely. A lot to take in, a lot to think about, and it has sort of made me remember a lot about the course, and such really good pointers.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So get your course notes out again, because you had the notes from the PowerPoints, but I gave some other information out, if you remember, about child development and other stuff. Young Minds, they have some really useful stuff on their website. And we did, right at the end of that course, we very quickly talked about how time passes, and things that are really major in years to come feel very different. So just remember that time will pass and you will miss, that's absolutely fine. Try not to miss out too much of this. It's not brilliant, but there will be things we will miss.
Yeah.
And I think most adults are not missing sitting in traffic, for example. So try and remember that, just to keep that context, rather than every day just being a massive battle. I'm really pleased that's been useful, and I'm really glad you took the time to contact me and chat those things through. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks very much for your time.